Over the last 10 years, I don't think there's been a better run club in English football than Brentford. And I'm including Sheffield Wednesday in that. Yes, the video is coming soon. Of the 11 other teams to come up from the Championship since Brentford won promotion 4 years ago, 8 have gone straight back down. Yet Brentford have never even finished within 10 points of the drop. They have finished in the top half in 2 out of the last 4 seasons, and they are one of only 10 teams to have a positive goal difference in the top flight of English football during the Premier League era. That's even more impressive when you consider the fact that the Bees had just been relegated to League 2 when current owner Matthew Benham first became formally involved with the club. They were a mid-table League 1 team when he assumed full control in 2012, and they have consistently had the lowest budget in the Premier League outside of the 3 promoted clubs, and sometimes even including them, since winning promotion. Following more than a decade of endless positivity at Brentford though, in which the Bees have enjoyed basically linear progress and improvement season upon season, this summer has been a turbulent one. As things stand, Brentford have lost their best player and top scorer from last season, with their second best player and second highest scorer also reportedly refusing to train in an attempt to force through a move. They have lost their club captain, goalkeeper and manager, the latter of whom had been at the club for 7 years, where he did a magnificent job. And they've also lost the bulk of their backroom staff, including their first team assistant, head of performance, chief analyst, and long-serving and highly regarded sports scientist. In Thomas Frank, Brentford have lost the third longest serving manager in the Premier League and EFL, who took them from mid-table in the Championship when he arrived in 2018 to mid-table in the Premier League last season, above both Manchester United and his new club Tottenham Hotspur. He has been replaced by Keith Andrews, Brentford's set-piece coach from last season, in what will be his first ever job in senior management. In Bryan Mbeumo and Yoane Wissa, Brentford have lost, or at least are on the verge of losing, 39 Premier League goals from last season. Throw in Christian Norgaard, who has joined Arsenal, and Brentford have lost exactly 2/3 of their league goals from last season, and 3 players who, in terms of combined goals and assists, made 59 goal contributions last season, for a team that scored 66 goals in total. Combine that with Sunderland and Leeds showing greater ambition in the transfer market than a lot of other promoted clubs in recent years, both of them currently outspending every Premier League team outside of the Big Six this summer, in net terms, and a fair few people have started quietly whispering the R word in relation to Brentford. Some have even said it quite loudly.
If they've decided that Jordan Henderson in 2025 is the midfielder to keep them in the Premier League, they're going down.
Well, that's gotta be good news for Brentford fans. Personally, I had been a little concerned for them, but if Rory's that confident they're going down, I'm fairly sure they'll be alright. In all seriousness, Brentford are a club in major transition at best, and a degree of turmoil at worst, in what a lot of people consider to be a potentially inopportune moment to have an off-season, which makes them very interesting. Or at least quite interesting. It's also a dilemma which goes to the very heart of the debate surrounding whether it is possible for a well-run club to consistently outperform their budget by any means in the modern game, or whether reality will always catch up with you, and just a few mistakes can undo a decade plus of magnificent management. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to West London, as we take a look at a tumultuous summer at the HITC Community Stadium. Fantastic name. If Brentford are really screwed and their whole project is indeed falling apart, or whether reports of their death may have been greatly exaggerated. On the opening day of last season, Brentford hosted Crystal Palace. The big story at the time was that Ivan Toney had been left out of the Brentford squad, amid interest from Arsenal, Chelsea, and clubs in Saudi Arabia. Amongst all of the noise though, Bryan Mbeumo and Yoane Wissa cut through to emerge from Toney's shadow, scoring goals in either half to make sure that the 3 points stayed in West London. It was to become a recurring theme throughout the campaign. Mbeumo, who had already been a key player at Brentford for the preceding 5 years, became the star of the show in Toney's absence. Meanwhile, Wissa, who only really became a regular starter during Toney's 8-month ban for gambling the previous season, reached new heights as a nailed-on starter, scoring 19 Premier League goals and 20 goals in all competitions. Together, Mbeumo and Wissa forged a superb partnership, arguably dovetailing even more effectively, and certainly more consistently, than even Toney and Mbeumo at their best. No duo accounted for a higher percentage of a team's goals or goal contributions than Mbeumo and Wissa in the Premier League last season. Meanwhile, Christian Norgaard, Brentford's midfield linchpin, ranked in the 90th percentile for interceptions among midfielders in Europe's Big Five leagues last season, the 88th percentile in terms of blocks, the 84th percentile for clearances and successful aerial duels, and the 74th percentile for tackles. That meant that Norgaard was among the most effective midfielders in the Premier League off the ball last season, hence Arsenal's interest in him, all while taking over 1,800 touches, which was the fourth most in the Brentford squad, and ranking in the 85th percentile for both non-penalty goals and non-penalty expected goals. In other words, then, the scale of what Brentford have lost is enormous, the challenge of replacing them is a daunting one, and they don't even have the stability, familiarity, or immense managerial talent of Thomas Frank and his staff to help them navigate these choppy waters and guide them through this transitional period. It's a set of circumstances which are formally known within the world of football as being significantly suboptimal. In many ways, though, we have been here before. One of Brentford's key selling points to players is not only that they are a brilliantly run club who will help to develop them, but that they won't stand in their way if they receive an offer for them which suits all parties. The Bees lost star players in Ollie Watkins, Said Benrahma, Neil Maupay, Chris Mepham, Ezri Konsa, Andre Gray, Scott Hogan, no relation, Ryan Woods, John Egan, Moses Odubajo, and James Tarkowski, all while still in the Championship, with some onlookers touting them for a major drop-off in light of some of those sales. On each and every occasion, though, even when it really ought to have been nigh on impossible, as in the case of Watkins, Brentford not only managed to replace them and recover from those setbacks, but either find upgrades on them or at the very least, continue to improve as a collective, culminating in a first ever promotion to the Premier League via the playoffs in 2021. Though Brentford had close to the lowest revenue in the Championship the season that they won promotion, at just £15 million, and a bottom half wage bill before their promotion bonuses were paid out, this wasn't a freak season by any means. It was Brentford's second successive season in which they had finished third in the Championship, within 4 points of winning automatic promotion, before reaching the Championship playoff final, where they had lost narrowly against their West London rivals Fulham the previous season. As a club with a modest stadium, previously Griffin Park, now the Brentford Community Stadium, a modest fan base and modest attendances, Brentford were reliant upon player sales to offset their operating losses. Though Brentford have long punched above their weight under Matthew Benham, their wage-to-turnover percentage in the season that they won promotion from the Championship, 2020-21, was 270%. It is normal these days, quite bizarrely, for Championship clubs to spend in excess of 100% of their revenue on wages, but it's still not normal to spend more than 200%. In fact, that is the highest recorded figure in the history of the Championship and, at least as far as I'm aware, the entire EFL. Even without their £12 million promotion bonus, Brentford's bottom half wage bill would still have accounted for 192% of their turnover, which would have been the third highest figure in the division. As a result, Brentford made an operating loss of over £50 million in the 2020-21 season, which was also the third highest operating loss in the Championship, on top of a £34 million operating loss the previous season, and 10 consecutive years of operating losses since Matthew Benham acquired full control of the club. Under normal circumstances, Brentford's day-to-day operations and losses would have made them one of the EFL's many crisis clubs, but an enormous £139 million in profit in player sales in only 6 seasons significantly boosted Brentford's revenue. Between the 2015-16 and 2020-21 seasons, no team outside of the Premier League generated more revenue via player sales, and the Bees had the highest positive net spend in the whole of English football, raising £95 million net in total, which was more than double that of both Norwich City and Hull City, the two clubs who were tied in second. That allowed Brentford to maintain spending in other areas and punch well above their weight. A modest stadium and attendances is less of an issue in the Premier League now that Brentford benefit from the league's enormous and relatively evenly distributed media rights revenue, but there have still been significant sales when the club's hands have been tied or an offer has been deemed too good to turn down. Ivan Toney's move to Al Ahly last summer is the most notable example, deemed to be a real hammer blow to Brentford's prospects by neutrals at the time, and 12 months before that, the Bees lost their impressive number one, David Raya, initially on loan and then on a permanent deal, worth a reported combined £30 million to Arsenal. Neither made a real dent on Brentford's relentless march towards progress though. As within those previous instances, there are still reasons to be optimistic about Brentford. While many will look at the loss of Mbeumo and Wissa and the lack of a direct replacement this summer, and assume that Brentford will therefore be toothless in attack next season, that overlooks the fact that the Bees brought in Igor Thiago from Club Brugge last summer as Ivan Toney's replacement for a club record fee. The big Brazilian, who is similar to Toney in more ways than one, scored 20 goals for Ludogorets Razgrad and 29 goals for Club Brugge in his first 2 seasons after moving to Europe from Cruzeiro. Unfortunately, after joining the Bees for a club record £30 million, which also constituted a Belgian Pro League record sale of €38 million, Thiago suffered a nightmare injury to his meniscus on his debut in a pre-season friendly against AFC Wimbledon, which was expected to rule him out for the rest of 2024. Thiago actually returned earlier than anticipated, coming back in mid-November, but in only his 4th game back and his first league start, against Newcastle, Thiago suffered an even more serious injury to his knee, which pretty much ended his season. He made cameo appearances in the last 4 games of the season, but Thiago's full return, following a pre-season in which he has so far managed to avoid any serious setbacks, isn't just like a new signing for Brentford, to quote an old cliché. It is genuinely like a new club record signing. In that sense, it probably isn't actually the worst time for Brentford to sell Yoane Wissa. The reality is that Thiago was signed for a club record fee to replace Toney, and had he been fit last season, there is every chance that he would have been Brentford's starting number 9, and Wissa would have been relegated to the role of a rotation option once again. The French-born DR Congo international will also turn 29 at the start of the season. He is unlikely to make any major improvements over the coming years, and last season was, by some distance, the best of his career to date. A fee of £30 million, therefore, which Newcastle are reported to have already seen rejected, wouldn't appear to be the worst deal for Brentford, and a fee of £50 million, which the Bees are reported to be demanding, would be fairly sensational business. The caveat to that, of course, is that while Thiago's ceiling may be higher than Wissa's, and he may well have been their first-choice centre-forward this season ahead of Wissa regardless, if he managed to hit the ground running, he has so far played just 169 minutes of Premier League football, and he is yet to score his first Premier League goal. The signs are promising. Thiago led the line well and scored in Brentford's opening pre-season friendly against Portuguese side Gil Vicente last month, but the Premier League is a significant step up from playing in Belgium, Bulgaria, and in the second tier of Brazilian football. What's more, with the loss of Mbeumo and the likely loss of Wissa, Thiago isn't being gently eased into a team that is already blessed with plenty of firepower, as would have been the case but for injuries last season. He is most likely going to have to bear the burden of being Brentford's main man from day dot, with a minimum expectation of hitting double figures, following close to 12 months out on the treatment table. Nonetheless, Thiago's talents, and indeed existence in some cases, is routinely overlooked by those who dismiss the Bees' prospects next season. The loss of Mark Flecken, likewise, is often included in Brentford's list of key departures, including by me for dramatic purposes during the introduction, when, in actual fact, the Dutchman's move to Bayer Leverkusen may well prove to be no great loss. Though some of the criticisms of Flecken were a little overblown last season, he made the most saves of any keeper in the Premier League last term, and he had among the most accurate and effective distribution. He was static at times and prone to the occasional howler. His replacement, as with Igor Thiago, is much less experienced, but Quiver Keller was superb whenever he was called upon at Liverpool, and if it wasn't for having one of the best goalkeepers in the world ahead of him, who is still only 32, combined with the pre-arranged arrival of the sensational Giorgi Mamajvali, who is 2 years younger than him, one suspects that he would have been a future Liverpool number 1. Kelleher has already played 67 games for the Reds, which has included 3 EFL Cup finals, 2/3 of which have ended with him lifting the trophy. It's over 3 years now since Kelleher started the 2022 EFL Cup final against Chelsea, in which he kept a clean sheet in both normal and extra time, and scored the winning penalty for Liverpool. His £12.5 million transfer fee, up front, rising to £18 million subject to add-ons. In a world where Aaron Ramsdale is apparently worth £31 million and Andre Onana in excess of £40 million, would appear to be a fantastic piece of business, and a rare instance of Liverpool not pulling someone's pants down for a fringe player, something which they are famously good at. It will be interesting to see how Keller handles the transition to being a number one, but I don't think that it would be unreasonable at this stage to describe selling a 32-year-old Flecken and replacing him with a 26-year-old Kelleher for only a marginal difference in terms of the two transfer fees, as both an immediate upgrade and a potential masterstroke long-term. Brentford have also retained the services of Mikkel Damsgard. Whilst many outsiders view Mbeumo, Wissa and Norgaard as Brentford being stripped of their three best players, you would do well to find many Brentford fans who wouldn't put Damsgard in their top three, if not top. Indeed, the receding Dane actually beat all three to both the Supporters Player of the Year and the Players Player of the Year at Brentford's 2024-25 end-of-season awards in May. Following a slow start to life in West London and a 12 to 24-month period adapting to the physical demands of playing in the Premier League, Damsgard was superb last season. He ranked in the top 5% of players in his position throughout Europe's Big Five leagues in terms of tackles, interceptions, and progressive passes. Damsgard was one of fewer than 50 players to average over 2 tackles a game in the Premier League last season, completing 83 tackles in total, which was the 20th most in the entire division, above Christian Norgaard, Manuel Ugarte, and tackle specialist Aaron Wan-Bissaka, whilst also playing the third most through balls of any player in Europe's Big Five leagues, trailing only Bruno Fernandes and Lamine Yamal. It shows an extraordinary variation and depth to Damsgaard's game and why, despite only scoring 2 Premier League goals last season, arguably no one is more important to how Brentford play, in terms of being brilliant in duels, masters of the second ball, and incisive and economical with the ball in the final third. It seems unlikely that Damsgard will replace the goals of either Mbeumo or Wissa, though he could certainly score a few more, but as a revelation last season who looks to be improving with every game, he's not only more than capable of becoming Brentford's talisman, some would argue that he already was. In terms of goals, Kevin Schade, though overshadowed by Mbeumo and Wissa, hit double figures in the Premier League last season, scoring as many goals as the £70 million rated Antoine Semenyo, who is 2 years older than him, and more goals than the likes of João Pedro, Eberechi Eze, and Dominic Solanke. Excluding penalties, Schade averaged more goals per minute last season than Mbeumo. He has a sharp eye for goal, as does Keane Lewis Potter if pushed further forward. He was the top scorer at Hull City in the Championship the season before joining Brentford for a potential £20 million, during a campaign in which he scored 7 goals in only 13 games when played through the middle. With opportunities in forward areas having been at a premium at Brentford, Lewis Potter has been deployed primarily at left-back or left-wing-back at the HITC, restricting him to just 4 goals in 67 Premier League appearances to date. A wonderfully clean striker of the ball though, Brentford's attacking exodus, and a possible tactical shift under Keith Andrews, opens up the possibility that he could be deployed further forward and find himself on the scoreboard more often. Then you've got Fabio Carvalho, who was signed by Brentford for a chunky potential £27.5 million from Liverpool only last season, having also impressed at Hull City. It would be fair to say that Carvalho had a quiet debut campaign at Brentford, that's a nice way of saying it was dog turd, in which he came in for his fair share of criticism, some of it not without just cause. He played 447 minutes of Premier League football in total, which is the equivalent of less than 5 full 90-minute matches, in which he scored 2 goals and made 1 assist, but right off the former England and Portuguese youth international, at your own peril. So many of the players already mentioned in this video, whether that be Yoane Wissa, Mikkel Damsgard or Keane Lewis Potter, had slow first season or even first seasons at Brentford, taking some time to get up to speed with the club's novel approach to the game, both on and off the pitch, before fully adapting and becoming key players. Unlike Lewis Potter, Carvalho is someone who probably couldn't ever have been shoehorned into a wing-back role. He is a gifted winger or number 10, but Mbeumo and Vissa's sales provide him with a massive opportunity at the start of this season to illustrate why he was one of the most highly rated teenagers on the planet when Liverpool signed him in 2022. I got the impression during Carvalho's brief half-season at Hull City that he revels in being the main man and in having the proverbial manager's shoulder put around him, hence his success at Fulham, And if he feels loved, I think he's more than capable of hitting streaky purple patches of form throughout a season and providing at least part of the solution to Brentford's potential goal-scoring problems. Jordan Henderson is someone who I have previously criticised on this channel, thoroughly deserved on every occasion, and he deserves zero sympathy for spectacularly torching his own reputation for absolutely no good reason. But while Rory considers his arrival to be all of the evidence that he needs to know that Brentford are doomed, I'm not so sure. Though Henderson's arrival has been described as being a radical departure from the norm in terms of Brentford signing predominantly younger and lower profile players, that also isn't quite true. Whilst Brentford have consistently targeted those kinds of signings under Matthew Benham's ownership, in terms of players who they feel they can get value for and then develop, they have also consistently added experience in key areas when required. 10 years ago, for example, Brentford added the experienced Danish international Lars Vibe to their squad to help aid the development of their younger forwards like Scott Hogan, Marco Juricin, and Philip Hoffman. 6 years ago, the Bees brought in Swedish international Pontus Jansson to add some know-how to their promotion-chasing ranks and aid the development of less experienced championship centre-backs like Julien Janvier, Mats Roslev, and Ethan Pinnock. And just a few years ago, Thomas Frank added an almost 34-year-old Ben Mee to his squad, who was not only highly dependable, but could also help guide the likes of Christopher Ayer and Nathan Collins through games and through seasons. Henderson fits that mould very well, therefore, adding not just experience but the experience of winning things as a Premier League and Champions League title winner and one of Liverpool's most successful captains of all time. There are also individual players like Michael Coyote, Anthony Milambo and Rommel Donovan, aged 21, 20 and 18 respectively, who were signed by the Bees this summer, who Brentford will hope that Henderson can help adjust to life in the Premier League, not to mention the fact that Brentford's new manager, Keith Andrews, is also extremely inexperienced, making know-how within the dressing room, and a manager on the pitch, so to speak, all the more important. He's also likely to be highly motivated, with the carrot of representing England at one last World Cup next summer still being dangled in front of him by Thomas Tuchel, and Henderson well aware that impressing in the Premier League would probably clinch his spot in the squad. So it's not all doom and gloom, and on a fundamental level, I think the Brentford squad just has lots of very good players, and in a like-for-like comparison with the Everton or Wolves squads, for example, let alone the three promoted clubs, I still think that it ranks quite favourably, even without three key players from last season. For all of Leeds and Sunderland's impressive signings, which I hope to cover in a future video, neither of them, I would argue, have a goalkeeper of the calibre of Quiver Kelleher, a centre-forward with the potential of Thiago, or just a player who is as good as Mikael Damsgard. It's also worth noting that Brentford finished 10th last season, not 17th, just 10 points off Champions League qualification, whilst being 14 and 18 points above Man United and Thomas Frank's new club Tottenham, and a whopping 31 points above the bottom three. Brentford were actually closer, points-wise, to winning the Premier League title last season than they were to going down. I suspect that won't be the case again this season, and a drop-off of sorts in such a major transitional season would hardly come as any great shock. But Brentford have enormous bandwidth in terms of how much they could drop off while still avoiding relegation. Goals are the biggest question, of course, and Thiago the biggest unknown, but I still look at Thiago, Carvalho, Damsgard and Schade among others, and feel as though Brentford have more firepower than any of the three promoted clubs, and it is likely, of course, that the Bees aren't done there. They have been linked in recent weeks with the likes of Celtic's Dazen Maeda, Ipswich's Amari Hutchinson, and Fiorentina's Amir Richardson. Now, I have no idea whether there is any truth to any of those reports. I am not that type of football journalist, but following big profits on Mbeumo, Wissa, Norgaard, and even Thomas Frank's compensation, while appointing a very cheap replacement, I would be surprised if Brentford didn't bolster their attacking ranks before the start of the season, or at least the end of the transfer window, in some way, shape or form, and it has been suggested that their reluctance to sell Yoane Wissa is partly predicated upon the fact that they haven't yet been able to sign a replacement. Add in the fact that Brentford are welcoming back Aaron Hickey and Rico Henry from long-term injuries, two brilliant young fullbacks at their best, the promising signs that Yeho Yarmolyuk displayed during the second half of last season, and the exciting arrival of Anthony Milambo, and, personally, I think the idea that Brentford's squad has been decimated and left in tatters has been at least somewhat exaggerated. There are caveats to the caveats naturally. Though Brentford recovered brilliantly from the loss of Ivan Toney, that wasn't a like-for-like comparison, given that they had already gone 8 months without him due to his gambling ban, in which Yoane Wissa had staked an impressive claim to be the club's starting number 9. Igor Thiago, although he very well could, hasn't yet actually illustrated that he is capable of leading the line for Brentford in the Premier League, and Mbeumo and Vissa's departures feel a lot more sudden, and will be a lot more of a shock to the system, than Toney's was in isolation. What's more, whilst Brentford's data-driven analytics and recruitment model has produced outstanding results for over a decade when it comes to replacing the club's most prized assets in terms of players, Brentford, unlike their fellow travellers Brighton, don't actually have much experience when it comes to replacing managers. The appointments of Dean Smith and Thomas Frank both proved to be masterstrokes, but that is it. 2 managers in the last 10 years, the most recent of whom was appointed 7 years ago. Keith Andrews, having never worked as a head coach in any capacity previously, remains a great unknown. His work wasn't particularly lauded at either MK Dons or with the Republic of Ireland, where he worked as an assistant, followed by a brief and uneventful stint under Chris Wilder at Sheffield United. He has earned plenty of plaudits at Brentford, as a set-piece coach, where he was a key part of Brentford scoring the 5th most goals from set-pieces in the Premier League last season, and the 2nd most from throw-ins. Despite his remit being set-pieces up to this point, Andrews is also known to favour a greater emphasis on possession than Thomas Frank, who is a master pragmatist, which is something that Brentford have been trying to pivot towards in recent years, keeping more of the ball and attempting to maintain greater control. That sounds great in theory. The danger is that due to his lack of pedigree and experience, if things don't start well for Brentford, it's not exactly inconceivable that some of the more senior members of the squad could begin to doubt whether he was up to the job, creating trust issues which were never a consideration under Frank. By contrast, Andrews does at least provide some stability as one of the only senior figures still at the club from last season, which I strongly suspect is at least part of the reason why he has been entrusted with the top job. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth, or 2 krona worth, as I am once again coming to you from a friend's wedding in Sweden, so I apologise if the audio wasn't up to my usual impeccable standards. One of the biggest factors in whether the likes of Brentford stay up this season, if indeed their demise is as great as their most pessimistic onlookers have suggested, is whether any of the 3 promoted teams are actually considerably better than they have been in recent seasons. That is a video, particularly in terms of Leeds and Sunderland, which I have been thinking about making, so let me know in the comments if that is something that you'd be interested in. And if this video hits 5,000 likes, I will consider that sufficient petitioning on your part, or parts, for me to make it. Yes, it's a bribe. Thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you did enjoy today's video or would like to see that video. It'll be way better than this one. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and of course, make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. Well, don't make sure. It's really optional, just if you'd like to, both to this channel, HITC Sevens, and also my second channel, Alfie Potts Armour, both of which should be about to appear shortly on your screen, so very little effort involved on your part. I've done all of the heavy lifting here, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. You can also find me on social media, various platforms out there, usually via the username @HITC Sevens, and you can now support me additionally, either by becoming a member of the Alfie Potts Armour YouTube channel, or via buymeacoffee.com/AlfiePottsHarmer, where you can also become a member, or make a one-off donation, and Google won't take 30% of it. Thanks as ever, I'll see you all next time. I hope that you have a superb day. Love you lots. Cheers.